You're watching Gearz, brought to you by LNC Truck. Keep them on the road.
You know, a few weeks ago, we started a project called the SR-71 Rapid Tool Express. And the idea was to blend the DNA of a '59 Ford panel truck with the legendary SR-71 Blackbird and the 100th anniversary of Cornwell Tools to build the world's fastest, street-legal tool delivery truck. Now, one thing that Cornwell and the SR-71 have in common is that they both represent a very high standard of excellence. So, it only stands to reason that everything I plan on using on this project has got to reflect that same high level of excellence. And nowhere is that more important than in the frame and chassis. Because, obviously, this is the foundation of your project. If this is bad, the whole project's going to be bad. Now, as you can see, this original frame is decent, but man, it would take a tremendous amount of work to bring this up to the standards of what I have planned for this truck. I mean, look at this. It would need new front and rear suspensions. It would need new brakes. It would need new steering. The frame would have to be boxed. It would have to be strengthened. I mean, look at these cross members. They're all butchered up. Those would have to be remade, fabricated, and you can do all that stuff. There's plenty of aftermarket parts out there to do all of that. We've even showed you how to do it on past shows. But it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be time-consuming, and it may not all work together if you don't know what you're doing. But what other option do you have? The Roadster Shop. The Roadster Shop has been building top-level components for hot rods and street machines for over 30 years.
Kind of started at the bottom, but I was doing MIG welding, some panel fabrication, building frame rails, eventually building chassis, and just kind of worked my butt off and worked my way, kind of up the ranks there.
My dad was getting ready to get out of the body shop business, and kind of his retirement and our future, we purchased the Roadster Shop as an existing company that had been around for quite some time.
As the popularity of custom vehicles continued to grow, the Roadster Shop quickly became known as the place to go to get quality work done and capable of building anything, from simple suspension swaps to custom resto mods and pro touring cars to one-off Riddler cars that we could show you, but we'd have to kill you. Obviously, these guys know what they're doing.
Customer can have a very hard and fast budget to start, and that will give us an instant idea of what we can accommodate for that.
Yes. Because that'll affect your design.
Absolutely.
It's two very different businesses, more of a production manufacturing on the chassis and suspension side, and then over here on the car build side, it's one-off artistic, designing every piece and component, and you're not limited by what a certain cost would be.
But that's only part of what goes on at the Roadster Shop, because they're not just about building complete vehicles for people. No, they also build frames and suspensions for people that want to build their own vehicle. Take a look. If you have a classic truck, muscle car, street rod, or just a crazy idea, the Roadster Shop can build a frame and chassis for it. They start by scanning in the dimensions of your original frame and then add the changes that you want in stance, suspension, drivetrain, etc., etc. Then they plug it all into the computer and the work begins. Sheet steel is cut with extreme precision to create the frame rails and the cross members. Then the metal goes into the welding station, where it's jigged up and fully welded by hand to exacting standards laid out by the computer. Once the welding is done and ground down, the bare frame moves on to the suspension area, where the proper front and rear suspension are installed, along with whatever options you may have specified. And when the finished chassis rolls out, the level of workmanship is high enough to go under the nicest show car, reliable enough to drive every day, and tough enough to race. And that's a heck of a combination.
Restoring a vehicle. Done right, it can be one of the most rewarding things you can ever undertake. Done wrong, it can turn your life upside down. Shake the money out of your pockets and squeeze the sanity from your brain. Stacey David's Restoration Series is here to help you do it right, so you can keep your money and your sanity and enjoy the fruits of your labor. So grab a wrench and let's get cranking. Stacey David's Restoration Series, now streaming exclusively on Amazon Prime.
Hey, welcome back to Gearz and the SR-71 project. where we've just picked up our new chassis from the Roadster Shop. Now, with the two chassis side by side, you can really start to see the difference between the original 1959 version and the Roadster Shop version. First is the front suspension. Now, this is their fast track suspension, and it's built around the C6 Corvette spindles and hubs. It has custom control arms, a massive front sway bar, rack and pinion steering, and the ability to handle any road course or autocross that you may venture out on. And notice that all the body mount holes and the core support holes are in the right place on the frame rails. In the center is a custom cross member and mid brace that eliminates the frame from flexing and twisting under heavy acceleration or cornering. And in the back is a 9-inch Ford with 31 spline strange axles and a heavy-duty 4-bar rear suspension with Penske coilover shocks. The cool thing about going with a complete replacement chassis like this is that the Roadster Shop has got all kinds of options. Different front and rear suspensions. You can get different motor mounts for whatever you're going to put in it. They'll even set up the stance for you so everything will be adjusted and ready to go when you get it. The best part is, you know it's all going to work together because it's designed to work together. And that's a good thing, especially when you see what engine we're going to stuff in this thing. The SR-71 Blackbird was one of the most unique aircraft ever built. A spy plane capable of sustained flight in excess of Mach 3.3, it required a radical way of thinking to get air into engines at that speed. By utilizing a special input cone, the engineers were able to create a type of forced induction that contributed to its amazing speed. Because of this, you can't call a project the SR-71 and put an average engine in it. No, you need something that's going to push the boundaries like that airplane did, like this chassis does. And for that kind of engine, you don't have to look any further than Jon Kaase Racing. Jon Kaase is well known for developing and building some of the best high-performance engines and parts in the business. However, his latest creation is something that they have been secretly developing for the Ford guys. A new aluminum head for the big block Ford that's so good, there was only one name that seemed to fit it, the SR-71.
My goal all along was to have a head that would make easily 1,000, maybe 1,100 horse that a guy can buy all the parts and not do anything to and assemble it and make that, and it'll still fit in a passenger car or truck, and you can buy headers that fit.
Beneath the valves, the intake and exhaust bowls are deeper, and the floor of the intake ports have less rise, allowing far superior flow and volume. Both the intake and exhaust valves are longer and redesigned for strength and flow, and the intake valve is a big 2.375, and the exhaust is a 1.76. The spark plugs are also relocated to put them more in the center of the piston, and there's many other subtle changes that allow the SR-71 to build incredible power way beyond anything you can imagine from a head that, on the outside, still looks like a stock Cobra Jet head.
These are very street-friendly heads because of the rocker arrangement and stuff like that. The only thing you have to decide is, you know, how much compression you'd want to run to get it to run on the street, and you'd want to back up the camshaft lift a little bit, but as far as running on the street, no problem.
If you've got a cool project and would like to show millions of other gearheads what you're working on, you need to join Gearz Nation. This is a free, interactive online community of auto enthusiasts that will allow you to learn from, share with, and encourage others, and at the same time, show off your project. There are also premium memberships available for access to special merchandise and the entire Gearz catalog. If you're into mechanical things, you're welcome on Gearz Nation. And who knows, you might even see your project on TV.
Hey, welcome back. If you're just getting here, man, you've missed it, because we've just finished unveiling Jon Kaase's new stealthy heads for the big block Ford called the SR-71s. Now, obviously, these heads will fit almost any 460, but they're going to work best on big engines from 520 to 600 cubic inches, which means you're going to need the proper bottom end to go with them. Of course, you can build that yourself, Or you can get Jon Kaase to build you an SR-71 crate engine to your specs. For example, for this project, I need 1,000 horsepower on pump gas, and it needs to be visually stunning if it's going to represent the SR-71. Here's the ingredients we came up with for that combination. So, a 460 block was stuffed with Lanotti crank and rods, and diamond forged aluminum blower pistons fill the cylinders, resulting in 547 cubic inches. A Steph's fabrication oil pan covers the fat bottom end and keeps it all lubricated. The SR-71 heads complete the long block and straddle the only induction that truly fits the legend of the SR-71, a blower. But not just any blower. Now, we needed the best to match those heads. So we made a call to the blower shop and got one of their 871 blowers and matching intake for the Ford 460, along with all of the pulleys and belts and brackets to make it all work. And as with all blower shop superchargers, this came completely assembled, tested, and ready to go with fully polished cases and hardware. To sit on top of that blower, I had to have something as unique as the rest of the engine. And nothing fills the bill like the old Scott slot injection that made Mad Max so famous. Fortunately, Scott injection is back, and the new owner, David Jensen, has completely redesigned the slot injection and brought it up to date with modern electronic fuel injection using Hilborn injectors and a Holley Dominator ECM and harness that flows over 3,000 CFM and will support over 1,000 horsepower. Now, once Kaase got all of these unique ingredients and put it all together, the visual impact of what we had created is pretty obvious. But how is it going to run on pump gas? And just how good are those heads? There's only one way to find out. So, Kaase and the boys put the hammer to the SR-71 and it topped the dyno at 1,027 horsepower at 6,700 RPM and 903 foot-pounds at 4,600 RPM. Now, obviously, we're going to need a pretty serious transmission to go behind an engine like this. So we went to Performance Automatic and got one of their 4R70W blue chip Street Smart transmissions for the big block Ford. Take a look at this. It starts with a 4R70W transmission that's modified to fit a blow-proof bell housing for a big block Ford. Then it gets stuffed with racing clutches and bands and modified street and strip valve body and overdrive servo. They also put in a hardened intermediate shaft, new solenoids, and they match it with a special 10-inch torque converter and MSD transmission controller, and of course all the hardware you're going to need. Now, this combination will handle that 1,000 horsepower the motor's kicking out, and with the powder coating and the aluminum pan, it looks like it belongs behind that engine as well. Okay, we have our engine decided, we got our transmission. What about a drive shaft? Obviously, we got to have something strong. And one of the best on the market comes from Denny's drive shafts. Now, Denny's has been building drive shafts for over 40 years, and they have got it dialed in. They specialize in high speed, high strength, high RPM drive shafts that they make for hot rods, muscle cars, 4x4s, even drag cars. Now, they'll build them to the length you need. They'll put the right ends and yokes on there so you get the drive shaft that you want. Denny even offers a lifetime warranty that if you ever break a weld or if you ever twist the tube, he'll replace it free. And I've been trying for years to destroy one of his drive shafts. Perhaps now I've got a big enough hammer to do it. Now, obviously, with the speed this thing's going to be capable of, we got to have some brakes. Now, the SR-71 had parachutes. We got something a little better with these bare brakes. Now, as you can see, they feature a big 6-piston caliper with the SR-71 logo cut right into it, because Bear can do that. And we're going to match them with these big 14-inch rotors. This will bring this thing to a stop in a hurry. Now, the rear brakes, very similar. Once again, it's a Bear kit that bolts right to a 9-inch Ford housing, but it's a little smaller. We're using the 4-piston caliper, a matching rotor, and the internal e-brake. So as far as brakes go, we're good to go. You know, one of the first true freedoms you experience as a kid is that first bicycle. man, it becomes your transportation to the world, or at least the local neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, man, we all had bikes. And we'd stick playing cards in the spokes, and we'd suck on black licorice, make it look like we were big biker dudes, and it was magic. But a bike wasn't just about transportation. No, it became an extension of your personality. And there were all kinds of bikes out there. There were 10 speeds, there were mountain bikes, there were Stingrays, there were BMX bikes, and they all had their strengths and weaknesses. And that's where the idea for the story of the purple bicycle came from. Because just like a bike might wish it had the talents or skills of another bike, so do we sometimes overlook our God-given talents and wish we had somebody else's talents, skills, color, abilities because they seem to be better than ours. It's a simple story. It's a simple lesson, but something we all need to be reminded of from time to time. Hey, welcome back to Gearz and the SR-71 Rapid Tool Express project. Now, so far, we spent a lot of time on the chassis and the drivetrain on this thing today, but a lot of you guys have been asking about what I plan on doing to the body. It's a good question. Let me show you, come on. To add some aircraft attitude to the side of the truck, we cut the tail fins and the tail light buckets out of a 1961 T-Bird. And I'm gonna graft those in down the quarter panel here, right down this body line, and angle them just like the tail fins of the SR-71. Now, one of the other reasons for doing that is we want that big Thunderbird tail light that looks like a jet engine on each side. So I needed some new parts for that. So we went to the Bird's Nest because they specialize in early Thunderbird parts. We got some tail lights and tail light buckets and the surrounding chrome. So this will give you an idea what that's going to look like out the back of that truck. That's awesome. Now, obviously, we're going to redo the whole interior and the dash and all that stuff, and we can't show you that yet. But what we can show you are what gauges we're going to use. Come on over here. This is the new Chronos gauge from Autometer, and as you can see, this is a high-tech, kind of military-looking gauge. Looks like something James Bond would have, which makes it perfect for a spy plane vehicle. And of course, like all Autometer gauges, they're compatible with any engine or transmission you might want to run. So they're great on a classic vehicle, and they're great on a newer hot rod. Now, you're probably wondering where I'm going to get the body parts for a 59 Ford panel, like weather stripping and glass and that kind of thing. Well, let's just say I'm going to be making a lot of calls to LMC Truck.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs. Born to burn.
When you're laying out your chassis, I know you're focusing on the engine and the drivetrain, transmission, brakes, that kind of stuff. But it's also the perfect time to lay out your exhaust system because you can get universal dual exhaust systems from places like Heartthrob that have all the tubing and the bends and the mufflers that you're going to need to build the system that you want. And it's never going to be easier than when you have the body off. And if you do it this way, then when you finally get to your final assembly, you can walk over to your shelf, grab your finished exhaust system, and bolt it on, and it's going to fit. That's the way to do it if you can do it.
And now, Suspension Tech, brought to you by Eibach, the leader in performance suspension, proudly made in the USA.
You know, with autocrosses and road courses so popular today, we get all kinds of questions about handling and shocks and springs and all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to jump into spring rates and how they work together with shocks. Now, most people are familiar with a spring rate. It's usually written right on the spring, and it'll say 100 pounds, 200 pounds, 300 pounds, whatever. And that is generally how many pounds it takes to compress the spring 1 inch. So if you have a 100-pound spring, and the spring needs to be compressed 3 inches to put it at ride height, you're going to take 300 pounds to do that. And you can weigh the front of your vehicle to see if it's in spec with the spring you've got. Now, keep in mind, if you go with a stiffer spring, that generally gives you better control and handling, but a stiffer ride. And obviously going to a softer spring does just the opposite. That's why things like Camaros and Mustangs have stiff springs, and Cadillacs and off-road vehicles have a soft spring. You want that suspension to move. Now, understanding the spring is only part of the equation. The other half is the shock, because the shock controls the movement of the spring through compression and rebound. And it does that through special valving that's inside the shock. That's why it's important to have a shock that matches the spring that you're using. That's why Eibach doesn't just build springs anymore, they do shocks too, so you have a matching set. Now, if your project is a daily driver, having a non-adjustable shock is fine. But if you're a tweaker and you like to tweak on your suspension, maybe take it on a road course, make it run better, you need an adjustable shock. You can see by this coil over here, you can not only replace the spring to change your spring rate, but you can also dial in your compression and your rebound so you can really make that suspension handle the way you want it to. Now, I know this may seem like a lot of stuff, might be kind of confusing, but remember, there's all kinds of places with tech lines like Eibach that you can call up, tell them what you want, tell them what you need, and they can set up the right springs for the way you want to run your vehicle.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Samuel Lillard from Dublin, Ohio, and his project is a 1965 Mercedes Unimog radio truck. And how cool is that? Now, he said he loved these things as a kid, and he always wanted to get one to convert to an expedition camper so he could drive it around town and do some camping with it. So he said he found an old Mog in New Jersey, and he started working. Check this out. Now, he says as far as mechanically, he didn't change much. He just restored and upgraded what was there. So in went a new ignition and clutch and flywheel, generator, radiator, that kind of thing. But the radio box, on the other hand, he completely changed it. Look at this. He raised the ceiling. He put in hardwood flooring. He put in cabinets, a sink, a propane tank, a refrigerator. Basically everything that you're going to find in a modern RV, he's got in his Unimog, except this is a lot cooler. And with that Unimog chassis, man, you know it's gonna go everywhere. So, to recognize such a cool project, Samuel, we're hooked up with our buddies at Woodward Fab. We're gonna give you one of these big bench vices, because I'm sure you needed that. And then we're gonna give you one of our Gearz t-shirts, because obviously you're a real gearhead. We're gonna set you up with one of our deluxe planning books, so you can keep track of all the stuff that you did to that Mog. We're also going to give you an electrical book, we're going to give you the purple bicycle, and we're going to give you a copy of Wheel Hub magazine, which is a high-end magazine that shows some of the really cool stuff that's going on in the automotive industry. Also, we're going to give you a gift certificate for LMC Truck, because I know there's some stuff in these catalogs that will help you out on that project. All right, that wraps it up for us today. I've got a really cool drivetrain to put into a chassis. Samuel's got a Unimog to work on. The question is, what do you have to work on? Yeah, you better get out there and find something. Start wrenching. We'll see you next time.